Could you wear something more decent when you're on a date with me?" Lucci frowned as Wesley approached her. "What's wrong with my clothes?" "I look fine," Wesley said, embarrassed. "I'm not going to wear a formal suit." "Why are you talking like that again?" Lucci rolled her eyes. "Why are you so mean today?" Wesley tried to hug her, but she stepped away. "It's embarrassing to go anywhere with you," Lucci sighed. "Your shirt is wrinkled and stained, you're wearing flip-flops, and you even have a hole in your sock. Your big toe is peeking out of the hole." She pointed to Wesley's right foot. "Well, I didn't have time to stop by my place to change," he replied guiltily. "I came over right after putting the vehicle into the depot. You said you wouldn't wait for me if I were late for a date. It was a tough route today. I didn't think I'd return before nightfall. I punctured a tire and didn't have a spare one. Fortunately, Derek was following me and helped me get to the depot. And I wear flip-flops because my feet get tired. Try driving all day long and you'll see what I mean." "Okay," Lucci calmed down a little. "Let's see each other next time." "I don't want to go anywhere with you while you're dressed like that." She looked at him again. "Lucci, come on." Wesley grabbed her hand. "I've missed you so much. I've been thinking about seeing you all the way here. Come on, at least let's go to the park. I'll buy you some ice cream." "Okay." Lucci walked quickly towards the park, "but let's go to the other side of the park so no one can see us." Lucci sat down on the bench and Wesley went to get ice cream. She looked around. There were elderly couples strolling leisurely, young parents walking with their babies, teenagers rollerblading, and dog owners walking their pets. "Here you go." Lucci shuddered in surprise and saw Wesley holding the ice cream. "I got the most delicious one for you." He sat down next to her, opened the ice cream, and began to eat it with gusto. Lucci looked at him and frowned. "Look, you stained your shirt." She pulled a napkin out of her bag and held it out to Wesley. "It's time to wash it anyway," he said. "How are things going at the university?" "Nothing out of the ordinary," Lucci replied indifferently. "I'm happy it's my last year. When I graduate," she rolled her eyes dreamily, "I'll have a completely different life." "Lucci, when are you and I getting married?" Wesley put his arm around her. "I've been courting you since high school. You know how much I love you." "Let's not start this unpleasant conversation," Lucci sighed. "I already told you that I need to finish my studies, get a job, and save up some money to rent my own place. I don't want to live with your mom or my mom after we get married," Lucci said. "But there's no problem with money." Wesley got up from the bench. "I'm saving for our wedding and future life. I deliberately ask for the longest trips because they pay more. I've been driving since I was a kid. My father taught me how to drive when I was still on his lap. A driver will always be able to find a job and provide for his family." "Let's wait a little longer." Lucci finished her ice cream and tossed the wrapper in the trash can. "I'll graduate first and then we'll talk." "Lucci, I know why you don't want to marry me," Wesley replied sadly and sat down on the bench again. "Your mom doesn't like me. I understand. I'm just a poor guy who only knows how to drive a car. I don't have time to read books or go to the theater. I haven't had the opportunity to get a good education, and I don't know how to keep up small talk. But your mother wants a rich, educated son-in-law." He took cigarettes out of his pocket. "But I can do a lot of things with my hands: fix a car, renovate a house. My father taught me everything." "That's not the point," Lucci said. "It's just that cleanliness is very important to my mom. She works as a nurse in the operating room, and everything has to be super clean, almost sterile. She tries to keep everything in perfect order at home. You know that the tiles in the kitchen and bathroom are sparkling clean. And you can even drink water from the toilet. If Mom sees even a little dust on the floor, she starts scrubbing again, even though she mopped the floors an hour ago. But I am so tired of it all. When my dad lived with us, he used to joke that he was afraid to get up at night to go to the bathroom because my mom would immediately make the bed after him. When Dad ate, Mom would stand beside him with a napkin and wipe the table right away if he spilled soup or got breadcrumbs on it." "You said your father left your mom, and he already has another family." Wesley looked questioningly at the girl. "Yes," Lucci nodded. "My dad got married again and has 2 sons now, Greg and Michael. I love visiting them so much. My dad's new wife, Kate, she's so sweet. There's a total mess in their house all the time, but that doesn't stop them from being happy. Kate treats me to cookies, which she bakes together with Greg and Michael. Daddy is always smiling now, But before, he was just always nervous and afraid to spill water in the bathroom or put the toothpaste in the wrong place. Or even just put a cup of tea on the table because Mom would immediately start yelling. Every time Daddy came home, he immediately wanted to leave the house because of it. Now I understand why your mother looked at me as her greatest enemy when I came to your house, Wesley laughed. When she offered me a cup of tea, not only did I spill sugar on the table, but I dropped a couple of crumbs on the floor when I ate the apple pie. Your mother remained silent, but I could tell by the look on her face that she already hated me. By the way, she forbade me to invite my friends over. Lucci sighed sadly. In her opinion, they dirtied the whole house, and she had to clean up after them for a long time. Don't worry, Wesley hugged the girl tightly. When we get married, we'll live in our own place, and we can do whatever we want. For example, I believe that it's not necessary to make the bed, and if you spill water or spill salt, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, and we don't have to wash the dishes because we have to eat later anyway, Lucy laughed. Well, you're wrong about the dishes, Wesley frowned, but we can buy disposable ones. We don't have to wash them. Isn't that a cool idea? Stop it, Lucci got up from the bench. I have to go home, or my mom will be mad at me for coming home late again. Lucy, why don't you move in with me, Wesley suggested. My mom wouldn't mind. She really likes you, and guests are always welcome, so feel free to invite your friends. Don't be ridiculous, the girl said angrily and walked quickly toward the exit of the park. I didn't mean to offend you, Wesley caught up with her and put his arm around her waist. If you don't want to, I'm not forcing you, he said peacefully. Let me walk you home. It's getting late. They stopped near Lucci's house. Wesley pulled the girl against him and kissed her on the lips. Can we walk some more, he asked in a low voice. But Lucci, seeing the curtain moving in the window, recoiled from the boy and hurried to open the front door. Bye, see you tomorrow, she sent Wesley an air kiss and entered the house. When she entered, her mother was already standing in the hallway. I saw you kissing Wesley again, Lucci's mother said grudgingly. I've told you many times not to go out with him, Harmony started shouting. Don't you realize he's not right for you? Mom, I'm not a child anymore, and I know better who is right for me and who is not. Lucci wanted to go to her room, but Harmony blocked the way. Anyway, Mom, I'm sleepy. I have to get up early tomorrow to get to the university on time. Yeah, you should be thinking about your studies now, not about that strange guy. Harmony stepped aside, letting her daughter go to her room. Final exams are coming up soon. When you graduate, you can do whatever you want. I know you don't care about your mother's opinion. Lucci cried because Harmony was going to start talking about her father and how he had ruined her life. Your father, Harmony continued, he was always wanting to break free of me too. He used to say that he was sick of me because of my perfectionism. Because of your what? Lucci didn't understand. What's that word? I can't even pronounce it. Well, it's the desire to make everything perfect and beautiful, Harmony said proudly. Is it bad when every mug is in its place and the towels are ironed and look just perfect? Don't you love it when the tile is sparkling and the closet is in perfect order? Mom, the function of a towel is to absorb moisture. I don't care if you ironed it or not, and I don't really care where or how the mugs are placed in the kitchen, Lucia replied with irritation. Don't piss me off, Harmony said loudly. I stopped taking care of your father, and look what he's become. His tie doesn't match his shirt. He's got a white sock on the sleeve of his jacket, and he hasn't been to the barber in a while. Are you spying on Dad? Lucci wondered. No, of course not, Harmony pretended like she didn't care. I don't care about your father anymore. I saw him by chance when he was out with his sons, and his kids are so unkempt. Their clothes are crumpled, stained with something. Their mother doesn't care about them at all. By the way, she doesn't look good either, always with a ponytail on her head and old flip-flops on her feet. It's disgusting. Considering the way they all look, they should be crying, but they're laughing happily. Lucy realized that her mother was desperately jealous and angry that her ex-husband was living happily and not trying to come back home at all. However, when he left, Harmony told him he would come back to her on his knees and beg her to forgive him. After listening to everything her mother wanted to tell her, Lucci finally made her way to her room and sat down on her bed. She loved her mom very much, but sometimes Harmony was unbearable. Lucci understood why her father had found another woman. He loved Harmony, but he just couldn't live like that anymore. But at the same time, Lucci felt a little resentful. Her father was doing well now while she had to continue living in this horror, plus her mother was trying to pry into her personal life. Lucci took her textbook but immediately put it back on the table. She didn't feel like studying at all. Then she pulled a book by her favorite writer from the shelf and delved into reading. Why wasn't I born at a time when young ladies wore beautiful long dresses, she thought, and their boyfriends were handsome, polite, and brave. She imagined walking down the cobblestone street in her lovely dress with a fur scarf on her shoulders. All the men who walked towards her respectfully lifted their hats from their heads and bowed politely before her. A tall man in a military uniform walked beside Lucci and gently held her by the elbow. Carriages passed by, horses clattered their hooves on the cobblestone road, the air smelled of spring, and Lucci felt happy and madly in love. All the men who walked towards her respectfully lifted their hats from their heads and bowed politely before her. A tall man in a military uniform walked beside Lucci and gently held her by the elbow. Carriages passed by, horses clattered their hooves on the cobblestone road, the air smelled of spring, and Lucci felt happy and madly in love. "Are you still awake?" Harmony entered the room and handed her daughter a ticket. "Pick up your coat from the dry cleaners tomorrow and make sure there are no stains on it. I know them, they can take your money and not really clean anything." Lucci nodded and, pulling the blanket off the bed, signaled to her mother that she was going to bed. All quickly passed and winter came. Lucci and Wesley saw each other less and less often because the girl started her internship and was preparing for final exams. Once when they met, Wesley told her he wanted to change his job, more precisely to go to another city to earn more money for their wedding. "I'll only be away for 6 months," he told the girl. "You won't even notice how quickly the time will pass. But then you'll be able to buy yourself the most beautiful wedding dress, and you'll be a real princess in it." "But we won't see each other for 6 months," Lucci said sorrowfully. "I can buy a cheap dress and be happy with it." "No," Wesley brushed the snow off her hat. "You'll be the most beautiful bride, and we will have a wedding that people will never forget." In early March, Wesley left, promising that they would marry as soon as he returned. "You should go out at least sometimes," Harmony said to her when she saw that her daughter spent all her evenings at home reading books. "It's spring outside, but you're always at home. Wesley will come back. He's not going anywhere." It was very warm outside, and Lucci decided to go to a cafe to have an ice cream and a cup of coffee. She stared out the window pensively and flinched when she heard an unfamiliar male voice beside her. "Excuse me, are you alone here?" She turned her head and saw the man looking at her intently. "May I sit at your table?" he repeated again. "I wouldn't bother you, but alas, all the other tables are occupied." Lucci looked around and saw that the cafe was indeed crowded. The place was full of students talking loudly and eating lunch. "Sure, have a seat," Lucci shrugged, pulling her cup of coffee closer to her. A waiter came to the table and set a plate of salad, dessert, a teacup, and a teapot that smelled of herbs in front of the stranger. The man took a paper napkin and carefully wiped the cutlery, then examined the teacup and seemed satisfied. He ate slowly, holding his fork in his left hand and his knife in his right. Lucy admired his unhurried movements and the way he chewed his food carefully. Suddenly, she thought that Wesley always ate quickly, mostly with a spoon, and then wiped his plate with a piece of bread and ate it. The way he ate always annoyed Lucci, and on top of that, he was also trying to talk with his mouth full. The stranger finished eating his salad and placed his fork and knife parallel to each other on the plate. Lucci had always thought that when lunch or dinner was finished, you should put the knife and fork down crosswise, but it turned out that wasn't right at all. On the contrary, it's a signal for the waiter not to take the plate away. Later, her mother had told her that when the meal is finished, the cutlery should be placed parallel to each other. The waiter immediately walked up and carried the empty plate away. The unfamiliar man poured himself some fragrant tea and, taking a dessert spoon in his hand, started eating apple pie. "The food here is quite good," he said, tasting the dessert and nodding in satisfaction. "Would you like a piece of pie too?" "No, thanks," Lucci replied. "No one makes apple pie better than my mom. She has a special recipe. Apple pie literally melts in your mouth." "Wow, I wish I could try your mom's apple pie. By the way, my name is Kenneth," he introduced himself. "I'm Lucci," the girl replied and looked out the window again at the crowd of young people who walked out of the cafe laughing loudly. "Do you live in this city?" Kenneth inquired, pouring himself some more tea. "Yes, I was born here, grew up here, and now I'm finishing university," Lucci nodded. "Are you a local too?" "No," Kenneth shook his head. "I am here on a business trip." "I guess you know that a sports complex is going to be built in your city," the girl nodded silently. So Kenneth continued, "I'll be supervising this construction in the initial phase, so I'll be staying here for 3 or 4 months. Lucci suddenly perked up and started asking Kenneth what would be located at this complex and when the construction would be finished. He gladly answered all her questions, and when they left the cafe together, the man said, "I have recently arrived here and haven't had time to explore your beautiful city. Would you be willing to be my guide? I'll buy you a delicious ice cream in return." Lucci immediately accepted his offer. They decided to meet the next weekend and take a walk around the city. When Lucci returned home, she thought about her new friend for a long time. He was not like the guys she had interacted with before. Kenneth attracted her by his intelligence, good manners, and literate speech. He was dressed in a dark formal suit and a white shirt, and his shoes were spotlessly clean. On Saturday, before meeting Kenneth, Lucci spent a long time in front of the mirror. Even Harmony noticed that her daughter meticulously chose her outfit and did her makeup. "Is Wesley back in the city early?" she asked grudgingly, admiring her daughter. No, Lucci spun around in front of the mirror, examining herself from every angle. "A few days ago, I met a man at a cafe who is here on a business trip. He asked me to show him the city." "Did you really notice someone else besides your beloved Wesley?" Harmony grinned. "It's hard not to notice Kenneth." Lucci fixed her hair and took her lipstick out of her purse. "He's not like our local guys. He has very good manners, and it's nice to talk to him." "That's the kind of guy you should date," Harmony said. "A guy who doesn't even know how to hold a teacup isn't right for you." "Okay, Mom, I have to go." Lucci kissed her mother on the cheek and left. She saw Kenneth from a distance. Today he wasn't dressed in a suit but in dark jeans and a beige sweatshirt, and he was holding a beautiful bouquet of flowers in his hands. "These are for you," he said when he saw Lucci walking over to her and holding out the flowers. "You look gorgeous today." The girl blushed and took the bouquet, inhaling the delicate scent of the flowers. "So, shall we go on our journey through the city?" Kenneth bent his arm at the elbow, offering Lucci to take him under his arm. They walked, and the girl told everything she knew about the city she had been born in and lived in all her life. "I didn't even know your city had such a long history," Kenneth marveled. "Too bad the local museum isn't open today. I'd love to see the exhibits." They reached the river station and saw a pleasure boat preparing to depart from the pier. "Hurry up," Kenneth grabbed her hand. "You'll be graduating from university in a few months, and it's time to consider your future." Lucci sighed, knowing her mother would not drop the topic easily. "Mom, please, can we not talk about this now? I have exams to worry about." Harmony put down her rag and looked at Lucci with a serious expression. "I just want what's best for you, dear. Kenneth seems like a good match." "I know you do," Mom, Lucci replied softly, "but I need to figure things out on my own. Wesley is still important to me." Harmony shook her head slightly but didn't push further. "All right, dear, just promise me you'll keep an open mind." "I will," Mom, Lucci assured her, giving her a quick hug before heading to her room. As Lucci sat on her bed, she couldn't help but think about the evening with Kenneth. He had been charming, polite, and attentive, so different from Wesley in many ways. The contrast between them made her feel conflicted. She picked up her textbook again, trying to focus on her studies, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Kenneth and the way he had made her feel. The next few weeks were hectic with final exams, and Lucci barely had time to think about anything else. She and Kenneth continued to meet occasionally, and each time she found herself more drawn to him. His manners, his intelligence, and his genuine interest in her life and thoughts were refreshing. One evening, after a particularly stressful day of exams, Lucci decided to take a walk to clear her mind. She wandered aimlessly until she found herself at the park where she and Wesley used to meet. She sat on a bench and reminisced about their times together, feeling a pang of nostalgia. Wesley had been her first love, and despite his flaws, she had cared deeply for him. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Kenneth. "Hey Lucci, I hope your exams are going well. Would you like to grab a coffee tomorrow and take a break? Lucy smiled at the message, feeling a warmth spread through her. She replied, "That sounds great. I could use a break. See you tomorrow." The next day, they met at a cozy cafe near the university. Kenneth was already there when Lucy arrived, sitting at a table with a view of the street. He stood up as she approached and greeted her with a warm smile. "How are you holding up?" he asked as they sat down. Exhausted, but managing, Lucy replied with a tired smile. "It's nice to take a break." They chatted about her exams and his work, and Kenneth listened intently, offering words of encouragement. After a while, he changed the subject. "Lucy, I wanted to ask you something," he began, looking a bit hesitant. "What is it?" she asked, intrigued. "I've really enjoyed getting to know you these past few weeks," Kenneth said, his tone earnest. "I know you have a lot on your plate right now, but when things settle down, I'd like to take you on a proper date." Lucy felt her heart skip a beat. She had been so focused on her exams and her conflicting feelings that she hadn't considered where things might be heading with Kenneth. I'd like that," she said finally, feeling a mix of excitement and uncertainty. "Great," Kenneth said, his smile widening. "We can figure out the details later. For now, let's just enjoy our coffee." As they sipped their drinks and continued their conversation, Lucy felt a sense of calm wash over her. She didn't know what the future held, but she was grateful for Kenneth's presence in her life. He made her feel seen and valued, and for now, that was enough. Mother, I have something important to discuss," he began, his voice serious. Harmony and Lucy exchanged curious glances. "What is it?" Harmony asked, leaning forward slightly. Kenneth took a deep breath and looked directly at Lucy. "I know we've only known each other for a short time, but I feel a strong connection with you, Lucy. I've enjoyed every moment we've spent together. I would like you to come with me to my city." Lucy felt her heart race. She hadn't expected this. "Kenneth, that's a big decision," she said slowly. "I have just finished my studies, and I was planning to find a job here." "I understand," Kenneth replied, "but I believe we can build a wonderful life together. My city offers more opportunities for career growth, and I will support you in every way. You can find a job there, and we can take our time to see where our relationship goes." Harmony's eyes sparkled with excitement. "This is a great opportunity, Lucy. Kenneth is right. There are more chances for you in a big city." Lucy hesitated, torn between her current life and the possibility of a new adventure. "It's just. Everything is happening so fast," she murmured. Kenneth reached out and gently held her hand. "I don't want to rush you, Lucy. Think about it. You can come for a visit first, see if you like it there, and if you do, we can take the next steps together." Lucy looked into Kenneth's sincere eyes and felt a surge of emotion. "All right," she said finally. "I'll come for a visit and see how it goes." Kenneth's face lit up with a smile. "That's all I ask. Thank you, Lucy." The evening continued with laughter and conversation, but Lucy couldn't stop thinking about the decision she had to make. She loved her city and her life here, but the idea of a fresh start with Kenneth was enticing. As Kenneth prepared to leave that night, he turned to Lucy. "I'll arrange everything for your visit. Just let me know when you're ready." "I will," Lucy promised. After Kenneth left, Harmony couldn't contain her excitement. "This is wonderful, Lucy. I can see a bright future ahead for you two." Lucy smiled faintly. "Let's take it one step at a time, Mom. I need to see how things feel when I visit." "Of course, dear," Harmony said, hugging her. "But I'm so happy for you." In the days that followed, Lucy prepared for her trip to Kenneth's city. She packed her bags, making sure to bring a few reminders of home. Harmony fussed over her, giving advice and encouragement. The day of her departure arrived quickly. Kenneth met her at the train station, helping her with her luggage. "Ready for this adventure?" he asked with a warm smile. "Ready as I'll ever be," Lucy replied, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. As the train pulled away from the station, Lucy looked out the window, seeing her hometown fade into the distance. She was stepping into the unknown, but she felt a sense of hope. With Kenneth by her side, anything seemed possible. When they arrived in Kenneth's city, Lucy was struck by its size and vibrancy. Kenneth guided her through the bustling streets to his apartment. It was spacious and tastefully decorated, reflecting his meticulous nature. "This will be your room," Kenneth said, showing her a cozy guest room. "Make yourself at home." "Thank you, Kenneth," Lucci said, feeling grateful. Over the next few days, Kenneth took Lucci around the city, showing her the sights and introducing her to his friends and colleagues. She was impressed by his world and started to imagine herself fitting into it. One evening, after a day of exploring, they sat on Kenneth's balcony, looking out over the city lights. "How do you feel about everything so far?" Kenneth asked. Lucci took a deep breath. "I like it here, Kenneth. It's different, but in a good way. I think I could see myself living here." Kenneth smiled, relieved. "I'm glad to hear that, Lucy. Take your time, and let's see where this journey takes us." As the weeks went by, Lucci found a job she liked and started to settle into her new life. She and Kenneth grew closer, and their relationship blossomed. Lucci still thought about Wesley occasionally, but her feelings for Kenneth were growing stronger. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through a park, Kenneth stopped and looked at Lucci. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Lucci's heart skipped a beat as Kenneth opened the box to reveal a delicate ring. "It's not an engagement ring," he said quickly, "but a promise ring. A promise that will continue to build our lives together, step by step." Tears filled Lucci's eyes as she looked at Kenneth. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Just like you," Kenneth said softly, slipping the ring onto her finger. Lucci felt a sense of peace and happiness. She was ready to embrace this new chapter with Kenneth, wherever it might lead. As they walked home together, Lucci knew that she had made the right choice. Life was unpredictable, but with Kenneth by her side, she felt confident and hopeful. The future was bright, and she was excited to see what it held for them both. And relax after the long journey. As Lucci took her shower and changed into comfortable pajamas, she couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. The sterile cleanliness of Kenneth's apartment felt cold and unfamiliar, a stark contrast to the cozy clutter of home she was used to. Nevertheless, she tried to keep an open mind, reminding herself of the opportunities this move could bring. Once she emerged from the bathroom, Kenneth had already set up the dining table with their Italian takeaway. They ate in silence, the only sound being the occasional clinking of cutlery against plates. Lucci noticed Kenneth's meticulous eating habits again, how he neatly cut his food and wiped his mouth with a napkin after every few bites. It made her feel self-conscious, as if every move she made was being scrutinized. After dinner, Kenneth suggested they watch a movie together. Lucci agreed, hoping it would ease the tension she felt. They settled on a classic romance film, but Lucci found it hard to concentrate. Her mind kept wandering back to Wesley, wondering what he was doing now and if he missed her at all. As the movie ended, Kenneth suggested they get some rest. "Tomorrow we'll explore the city," he said with a smile. Lucci nodded, still uncertain about what lay ahead. The next morning, Lucci woke up early to the sound of Kenneth preparing breakfast in the kitchen. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and toast filled the apartment. She joined him at the table, and they discussed their plans for the day. They spent the morning wandering through the city streets, Kenneth pointing out landmarks and sharing interesting facts about each place they visited. Lucci tried to immerse herself in the experience, appreciating the beauty of the new city, but she couldn't shake off the feeling of homesickness. As they returned to the apartment in the afternoon, Lucci felt exhausted both physically and emotionally. Kenneth suggested they relax for a while before making dinner together. Lucci agreed, grateful for the chance to unwind. Over the next few days, Lucci settled into a routine with Kenneth. She explored job opportunities in the city while Kenneth went back to work on his project. They would often meet in the evenings to cook dinner together and talk about their day. Despite Kenneth's efforts to make her feel comfortable, Lucci couldn't help but miss her old life. She missed her mother's bustling kitchen, the familiar streets of her hometown, and most of all, she missed Wesley. His absence weighed heavily on her heart, and she found herself comparing him to Kenneth more often than she liked. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Kenneth turned to Lucci with a serious expression. "Lucci, I've been thinking," he began slowly. "I care about you deeply, and I want us to make this work. But I can see that you're still unsure." Lucci looked at him, feeling a mix of guilt and confusion. "I appreciate everything you've done for me," she started hesitantly. "But I miss my old life, my family, and Wesley." Kenneth nodded understandingly. I understand. Moving here was a big change for you, and it's okay to feel uncertain. They sat in silence for a while, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled in. Finally, Kenneth spoke again. Lucci, I want you to be happy. If that means going back home or figuring things out with Wesley, I'll support you. Tears welled up in Lucy's eyes as she realized how much Kenneth cared for her well-being. Thank you, she whispered gratefully. I just need some time to think. Kenneth nodded, his expression gentle. Take all the time you need. I'll be here for you, no matter what you decide. As the days passed, Lucci reflected on her feelings. She realized that while Kenneth was kind and caring, their relationship lacked the warmth and familiarity she craved. She missed the spontaneity and simple joys of her old life, the comfort of her mother's home, and the hope of reuniting with Wesley. One evening, Lucci called her mother to talk. Mom, she began softly, I miss you and home so much. I think I want to come back. Harmony listened quietly on the other end of the line. I knew this move wasn't easy for you, sweetheart, she said gently. You're always welcome back home. We'll figure everything out together. With a heavy heart but a sense of relief, Lucci packed her belongings and prepared to return home. Kenneth understood her decision, though it pained him to see her go. They parted amicably, with Kenneth promising to stay in touch and wishing her all the best. Back in her hometown, Lucci reunited with her family and friends. She took some time to readjust and reflect on her experiences. She eventually reached out to Wesley, who was surprised but happy to hear from her. They met up, talked things through, and gradually rekindled their relationship. In the end, Lucy learned valuable lessons about herself and what truly mattered to her. She appreciated the opportunities Kenneth had offered her and the chance to explore a new city, but ultimately she realized that home was where her heart belonged for now, at least. And set the table, Kenneth would meticulously inspect everything, from the arrangement of the plates to the cleanliness of the cutlery. Lucy felt increasingly frustrated by his constant nitpicking and high standards. She confided in her colleague during their lunch breaks, expressing how Kenneth's demands were becoming unbearable. He sounds really particular, her colleague remarked sympathetically. Have you tried talking to him about how you feel? Lucy sighed, stirring her soup thoughtfully. I've tried, but he just doesn't seem to understand. To him, everything has to be perfect. He doesn't see how exhausting it is for me to keep up with his expectations. Her colleague nodded understandingly. It sounds like he's very set in his ways. Maybe you could try explaining to him again, calmly, how his constant criticisms are affecting you. Lucy considered her colleague's advice. That evening, when Kenneth returned from work, Lucy broached the subject tentatively. Kenneth, can we talk for a moment, she began, trying to keep her voice steady. Kenneth looked up from his laptop, his expression serious. What is it, Lucy? I appreciate everything you do for me, she started carefully. But I'm feeling overwhelmed by all the expectations and criticisms. It's hard for me to feel comfortable and relaxed in this environment. Kenneth frowned, a hint of frustration crossing his face. I just want things to be orderly and clean, he explained. It's important to me. I understand that, Lucy replied gently, but I also need some space to be myself, without feeling like I'm constantly being judged. There was a moment of silence as Kenneth considered her words. Finally, he sighed and nodded. I hear you, Lucy. I'll try to be more mindful of how I express my expectations. Lucy felt a wave of relief wash over her. Perhaps there was hope that they could find a middle ground. Thank you, she said sincerely. I want us to be able to enjoy our time together without tension. Over the next few weeks, Kenneth made an effort to dial back his criticisms. Lucy noticed small changes, fewer comments about the cleanliness of the apartment, more relaxed evenings where they could enjoy each other's company without the pressure of perfection. They started exploring the city together on weekends, visiting museums, trying new restaurants, and attending cultural events. Lucy began to feel more at ease in her new surroundings, appreciating the vibrant energy of the city and the opportunities it offered. At work, Lucy settled into her role as the office manager's temporary replacement. She enjoyed the challenges of her job, building relationships with colleagues, and feeling a sense of accomplishment in her work. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Lucy turned to Kenneth with a smile. I think we're starting to find our rhythm, she said softly. Kenneth nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "I'm glad," he admitted. "I've been thinking about us, Lucy. About our future." Lucy looked at him, curiosity and apprehension mingling in her gaze. "What do you mean?" Kenneth took a deep breath. "I've come to realize how much you mean to me," he began earnestly. "I want us to build a life together, one where we support each other and grow together." Lucy felt her heart skip a beat. His words were unexpected yet filled with sincerity. She thought about the journey they had been on, the challenges they had faced, and the moments of understanding they had reached. "I care about you too, Kenneth," she replied softly. "But I think we still have things to figure out, don't you?" Kenneth nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Of course. I want us to take our time and make sure we're both ready." They sat in companionable silence, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. Lucy felt a sense of optimism about their future, knowing that they were learning and growing together, step by step. As weeks turned into months, Lucy and Kenneth continued to navigate their relationship with patience and understanding. They learned to compromise, to communicate openly, and to appreciate each other's strengths and differences. One day, as they walked hand in hand through a bustling street market, Lucy glanced at Kenneth with a smile. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "maybe those chocolate balls weren't such a bad idea after all." Kenneth chuckled, squeezing her hand affectionately. "Maybe not," he agreed warmly. "Sometimes it's the little surprises that make life more enjoyable." And as they strolled through the market, surrounded by the sights, sounds, and aromas of the city they now called home, Lucy felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought them together and the possibilities that lay ahead. "They'll get all wrinkled," Kenneth remarked calmly. "How do you think you can cope?" "With living on your own, you don't have any money," Lucy noticed. "I'll manage." She replied shortly, "Besides, if I ever have any problems, my mom will always help me with that." In fact, Lucy didn't want to leave Kenneth. She really loved him, but she couldn't stand being his slave anymore. That night she hardly slept thinking about the man she loved so much, but who didn't appreciate her. Finally, the girl made up her mind to talk to Kenneth in the morning before he went to work. Lucy sat down in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and waited for him after Kenneth had dressed and had breakfast. He saw Lucy sitting at the table and went up to her. "Why are you upset?" he asked calmly. Lucy looked at him without saying a word and stood up. With difficulty, she opened her suitcase and gave him all her money. "I don't need them," she said in a trembling voice. "What's this?" Kenneth looked at her in surprise. "I'm leaving you," Lucy explained. "I can't stand living with you anymore. I feel like I'm your slave, not your girlfriend, and I'm not willing to put up with it anymore." Kenneth looked at her sadly and nodded his head. "I see, Lucy," he said quietly. "I'm sorry if I didn't appreciate you enough. I've always been this way, obsessed with cleanliness and order, and I didn't realize how much pressure I was putting on you. I really love you, Lucy, and I don't want to lose you. If you give me another chance, I promise I'll change. I'll try to be less demanding and more understanding. I'll give you space to be yourself." Lucy hesitated. She could see the sincerity in Kenneth's eyes, but she also knew that changing habits was not easy for him, yet she loved him deeply and wanted to believe that they could find a way to make it work. "Okay," she said finally, "I'll give you another chance, but we need to work on this together." Kenneth smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Lucy. I promise you won't regret it." They hugged each other tightly, and Lucy felt a wave of relief wash over her. She knew that it wouldn't be easy, but she was willing to try for the sake of their relationship and their love for each other. The story concludes with Lucy finding her way back home, reuniting with her mother, and ultimately reconnecting with Wesley, realizing that true happiness lies in being with someone who accepts her for who she is. Despite the challenges and lessons learned from her time with Kenneth, Lucy emerges stronger and more sure of herself. As she walks with Wesley, she reflects on the importance of being with those who bring joy and understanding into her life, rather than trying to conform to someone else's expectations. With Wesley by her side, Lucy finds comfort and happiness in the simplicity of being loved for who she truly is.